With thanks to the City of BRIMBANK across our neighbourhood and the world, the Sports Hour with Max Hatzoglou on BRIMBANK Live on Live FM.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Hour on BRIMBANK Live on Live FM. Great to have your company. I'm your host Max Hatzoglou, and today the Sports Hour is a part of Harmony Week, where we celebrate everyone belonging in Australia and across the world. We've got the Executive Manager in charge of growth and inclusion at Football Victoria, Karen Pearce, coming on to talk a little bit about her role at Football Victoria and what's happening there. Then we're also going to get Connor Kennedy, nutrition coach and personal trainer, who's going to talk to us a little bit about meditation today. We've also got Patrick Morrow, who's going to come on to talk a little bit about the A-League and what's happening in that exciting season, so we look forward to that. And we've also got AFL supporter of the Adelaide Crows, Jack Fisher, who's going to come on to talk a little bit about the exciting win that the Adelaide Crows had over Geelong on the weekend, and also talk a little bit about what's happening in the AFL world. So we're looking forward to that, and I hope you enjoy the show. It's my pleasure to welcome Executive Manager of Growth and Inclusion at Football Victoria, Karen Pearce. Welcome to the Sports Hour. How are you going?
Very well, thanks, Max. How are you?
Good, thank you, and thanks again for coming on the show. It's great to have someone on the show that's involved in sport and works for an organisation. So thanks for that. And can you tell us a little bit about your role at Football Victoria?
Yeah, my role, I actually came on board in June 2019 as the Executive Manager Women and Girls. So my focus was predominantly driving the growth strategy for women and girls. And then by about December 2019, my role expanded. So I now look after the diversity and inclusion space. So that's all the multicultural, Aboriginal, women and girls, all abilities, all of that role, PLBT plus, and then also the clubs under Megan Mayman, so including the women and girls still. So pretty big portfolio, but lots and lots and lots of work to do.
Yeah, that's covering a lot of different aspects there, so that's awesome. And it's Harmony Week as well, which is part of the reason why we thought, it's great that you're on during this week, as your role is in growth and inclusion. Can you tell us how COVID-19 and the pandemic has sort of impacted all that and sort of the business and trying to continue running the game of football while the pandemic has happened?
Yeah, devastating for the world, really. It's just, and I think we're still in that hesitant stage of, are we emerging or are we not? So we closed the office in March last year, 2020, and didn't really know how long it was going to last and, what we were going to do, and unfortunately had to move staff in and out of their role throughout the year, including the executive team. Even the CEO was on stand down for a while. So we were trying to still get fixtures up and going because, we thought it was going to people were going to get back on the pitch. And so we had the competitions team working frantically in that space, just refixturing when they knew there was an opportunity coming up, which obviously didn't happen. So financially, it's impacted football critically. So the exciting part is that we are re-emerging now. I remember when we were locked down here in Victoria last year and thinking to myself, how is sport ever going to bounce back from this? And is sport going to still emerge the way it always has? Or is it going to emerge from a local level? And then what's the role of a state sporting association and even a national sporting organisation? Like, what is our role going to be? Is it totally going to flip sport on its head, or are we just going to bounce back like we always have? So it was really interesting to see. I think what we've got now is still a lot of community still hesitant about registering, which is making it extremely difficult for our competition team to be doing their fixtures. But we're out on the pitch. I was down at Glen Ira today at the launch of their women and girls teams, and, you know, it just felt, apart from it was pouring with rain, but it just felt normal. You know, it was great to be back, and, you know, hopefully we get full seasons up and going. And if not, then how do we think differently in the sporting landscape? We've got boys and girls FC Cups on next weekend, so that's in Bendigo, I think it is. So a whole lot of teams registered for that, which is extremely exciting. So I think if we get past things like that, we can look at it and say, yeah, football's back. The good thing in the women and girls part is I wrote a women and girls strategy late 2019, and part of that was talking about how we can grow women and girls, because it's drastically low. It sits on about 9% for referees, around 10% for coaches. It's only about 22% for female players. We only have 38 female presidents out of 364 clubs. So the rates are really, really low. So part of what I wrote about was changing the concept of not changing the traditional model of football, but reigniting other aspects of football to re-engage women and girls in different ways so they can move in and out of the pathway whenever they want to. And a lot of that was written around social activation. So I look at COVID and I say, towards the end of last year, we started to roll out a few social activations at Clubland just to get people back on the pitch, just a one day, a weekend, whatever it was. And I sat back and went, gee, that happened pretty good. That was pretty easy to get that done. Whereas I think if COVID hadn't happened, making change to anything takes time. So I look at COVID as being a bit of an opportunity for the women and girls space. And let's see how it goes from there.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, obviously, you know, you get the disadvantages from COVID because it stops the game, but, you know, I was going to ask you about some of the positives, and it's great to hear that, you know, that they were able to be some, you know, big turnouts in community events after COVID, and sort of that restraining people from not being able to play, and then after COVID, people are able to. So that's great to hear. I was going, and along with that, how much of an impact has sort of the Women's World Cup in 2023 is going to be staged in Australia and New Zealand, which will be a massive boost. Are there sort of plans coming up for around that time and sort of working out ways to even expand the game in the women's side even more during that period?
Absolutely. Yeah. What happened, you know, it was end of June, I think it was June 26, 2020 when the announcement was made, and, you know, Australia and New Zealand and, you know, lots and lots of people around the world went crazy. You know, it was the best thing that we'd heard for such a long time, that, you know, we got the rights to host the Women's World Cup. And so in the middle of a pandemic, the excitement and the joy around that announcement lasted about a month, and then there's no sport, there's no football. So there's not a lot happening, and usually happen with a major announcement like that is just momentum keeps building. So what we have to do is not rewind the clock, but we have to re-emerge that, not the announcement, we can't do that again, but to make sure people are still excited, because 2023 is not that far away. It's actually quite daunting when you think of it.
Yeah.
And we always know, research tells us that on the back of any major event in sport, there is a surge of interest. So we have to ensure, as part of the legacy of the Women's World Cup, that we're ready. We're ready. We're already starting to grow the game, and we're ready for the absolute impact post the Women's World Cup that we're expecting of more women and girls, and even men and boys, who want to play football. So that goes down into, you know, making sure that we've got enough pitches, facilities, you know, for women and girls are female friendly, all of that, and that our clubs have the capacity to actually take on more. So does that, even when it gets to that stage, does that mean we start thinking about that we're not just a seasonal sport. Is there other things that we can do that it's not an off season, but that we become a 12-month of the year sport to actually cope with the growth? So we've now taken on futsal. Futsal's back under our umbrella.
Yeah.
That's a massive opportunity just even there in futsal to grow that and grow levels of that. We're looking at the school activations and how we get into the school grounds and make sure that any young child or even, high school kids can actually participate in football, even if they can only do it at school because they can't do it out of school hours, that we can provide that ability for them. So, I think there's going to be a massive increase in participation over the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned futsal there, and I was going to ask, about some of the different versions of soccer, because everyone probably from the outside sees it as just an outdoor sport, played on a full-sized ground. But there's a lot of different aspects like social competitions and disability soccer and wheelchair soccer. Do you want to explain to us a little bit more about some of those and those projects that are happening?
Yeah. So we have all abilities programs. So for anybody with any learning difficulty can participate in all abilities football programs. We have power chairs. So for those that are in motorised wheelchairs, have the ability to participate in football there. We've just had Western United take a team under their umbrella, which is really exciting. That got announced the other week.
Yeah.
We're really driving walking football. So that's for the more senior citizens of Victoria to actually participate in that. And what is really exciting about walking football is it's predominantly older women, and I love that. The participation rates there are greater for women than they are for men, which is really, really interesting. But underneath that is also the capacity to run competitions in that area, but to also just provide it as a social activation. And then, we're looking at driving the growth through the specialist school system, again through school, as I said, school-based sport. We've got multicultural mini-roos programs that we run for new arrivals through English language schools. We run crime prevention programs for people that have been usually young adult male, but we're looking at driving a women's program through the justice system. So, we've really spread our wings to cover all communities of Victoria. So, I find it extremely exciting. We can provide opportunities for, little 3 and 4 year olds that I do hear get out and have a kick around right up until, people well into their 80s and 90s. So there's an opportunity for anyone. We have our soccer mums programs there for mums, usually around, the mid-30s upwards, and whether they've ever kicked a ball or not before, there's an opportunity for them to socialise and have a kick around. And, adaptive football is really important, and I look at that in the women and girls space and say not every woman or even every girl wants to run around on that big full-size pitch, because I know I can't do that. But if you can adapt that pitch to me, cut it down again, or give me one of those little pods, or give me futsal that isn't as fast as, an A grade, that give me a C grade or a D grade level to get out and have a go. I think that's another way that we'll grow football.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's quite amazing, the list of different events and like projects and different versions of the game. So congratulations on that. That's a long list, and it's great that that's happening. And in terms of the future and what's ahead, what are some of the things that are really exciting for you, and some of the goals that you have for the future of football in Victoria? And obviously in Victoria, it has an impact on the game at a national level as well. So, what are some of those exciting elements and goals?
Yeah, well, our biggest strategy that we have is to reach 50-50 gender equity by 2027. It's a massive part of our strategic plan. And I remember when I was first brought on board and I actually laughed and said, gee, I hope that's not a KPI when I started to look at how low the numbers were. So there's a lot of work to do in that space. We run leadership programs for women on committees just to enable them. They know what they're doing. They're there for a reason. But just to provide them with more confidence to actually be stronger around that table that's predominantly sat around by, confident men. So, if we can start to really impact the low numbers and start to rise towards that 50-50 gender equity, I know I've done a really good job. And if we can start to see the growth of football throughout every single aspect of community, and that is the sport of first choice for people, that they're automatically going, I can play on a full-size pitch, I can roll around in my chair, I can be the woman. We've just celebrated International Women's Day, and one of our beautiful volunteers, Lynn Toll, the way that she's been involved in football for 30 years is running the canteen. And they've just named the canteen down at Geelong in her honour. It's called the Lynn Toll Canteen.
Yeah.
So my strategy is all around football her way, so celebrating the fact that anybody can participate in football any way they want. Now, for my strategy, it's women and girls relative, but really if we ultimately look at that, we provide an opportunity for anybody to do football the way that they want to, and they have the ability to do it where and when they can. I think we've got phenomenal outcomes that we can reach in the not too distant future to keep driving the game the best that we can.
Absolutely, and hopefully the World Cup in 2023 provides a massive boost for that. It's good timing to have you involved there at Football Victoria, and with the World Cup. Thanks very much, Karen, for joining the Sports Hour today and sharing your thoughts. Much appreciated.
Thanks very much for having me, Max.
And we thank Karen for coming onto the Sports Hour to share her thoughts on what's happening at Football Victoria as the Executive Manager in charge of growth and inclusion. So we thank her once again, and now we're going to cross to Patrick Morrow, who's going to give us an update on the A-League and also talk to us a little bit about other sports and what's happening in the world of sport.
And now it's the time in the show where we welcome our sports writer, Patrick Morrow. How are you going today, Patrick? I shouldn't say our sports writer. You're writing for the Raw Sports and a few other places. But welcome. Great to have you on.
Absolute pleasure, Max. Thanks for the little pump up there, mate. All good. Pleasure to be back on, mate.
Yes, it's great to have you. And there's been a little bit happening across the different sports, and there was an interesting score in the Sheffield Shield between New South Wales and Tasmania. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Tasmania playing New South Wales in the Sheffield Shield, which is still going on at the moment. If you're wondering, cricket season has not stopped. It's still going. So New South Wales were batting against Tasmania second day of the 4-day game, and Jackson Bird come along and ripped through them and took 7 for not many to have New South Wales all bowled out for 32, which is the 5th lowest score in Sheffield Shield history and the lowest score for the New South Wales cricket history. So I think they've broken an unwanted record in terms of I think it's only stand. I think the slowest scores stand for about years or something. So it's been broken.
Yeah, wow.
So,
can you just repeat them again, Patrick?
So New South Wales were bowled out for 32. Tasmania made 330 odd in the first innings. So made a fair old score.
Yeah, and those records, they're remarkable.
So
what were they again?
So the record is that New South Wales' score of 32 is the 5th lowest score in Shield cricket. And I think is the lowest score in New South Wales cricket history as in the New South Wales first class 11 team. So I think it's been the first time broken since I think the 1950s or 40s. You'd have to look through the books, and someone will be looking through it right now, I'm guessing. But it was a bit of a shocker for him, and New South Wales played a bit of an understrength side. No Steve Smith, no David Warner. To be fair, Stark was playing, but he's not recognised as a batsman. Also, they technically were bowled out 9 down. Sean Abbott was named absent, so he must have been on a plane, I'm guessing. So it's all it looks a little bit all fickle, and I think the pitch must have been doing something as well at the same time. Bird must have had it hooping around as he normally does in Tasmania. So just shows you, though, home conditions, again, does funny things. And we're at the time of the year in Australia where it's cold and the ball's going to do a bit more than it should do. So it's a bit like playing in the early September or October time. So it's very different to what they were playing in the middle of February and January when it was hot and humid and it was a road of a wicket to bat on. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And I had a look here. Just Sean Abbott, he managed to get 6.2 overs in the first innings, and then he must have been injured, so he couldn't bat. So that's probably a pretty serious injury if he wasn't able to bat as well. And it's interesting. New South Wales, they played 5 bowlers. If you count Mitchell Stark as a bowler, but he has made runs though in Shield. So but it's interesting. The lineup they're underdone with the bat slightly without Smith and Warner there as well. But wow, to get bowled out for 32, that's quite incredible and probably worth watching. So that was funny to see that pop up, and it's interesting. And the interesting part about it is Tasmania also made 333, and they batted first, and then New South Wales come out and get bowled out for 32, and then Tasmania, they're currently sitting 5 for 165. So the pitch must not be too bad. Just interesting, really. We'll move on, Patrick. There's a bit happening in the A-League. I've been seeing it's getting towards the sort of middle part of the season. And, there's been some interesting results over there. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so last night, unfortunately, the Melbourne Victory versus Sydney FC game, the Big Blue, was called off due to the weather in Sydney. Had about 100 mils of rain in one day, Max. So there was no chance of them playing in the Olympic Stadium last night. Apparently the ground was completely soddened. But what was interesting enough, Macarthur FC, the new boys in town, they were able to play at home against Western United, who are from Melbourne. They lost 2-1 to Macarthur FC, wet and miserable old day up in Sydney. I'm surprised they would even get on the pitch. Looked dreadful, just conditions-wise. It was a pretty good game where Western United scored the first goal and a brilliant goal by Dylan Pereiras in the 8th minute. It was a curler of a goal. Looked like he was playing in dry conditions for the first 5 minutes, Dylan did. And then Macarthur, just a bit of class in the end, looking from the scores 2-1. Matt Derbyshire with a lovely header in the 35th minute. And then Mikhail Sukuska got a corner, really good set-piece play, scored a corner and got won them for him just before the half. So that was the 3 goals were scored in the first half only. So the second half was quite of a dull affair due to the weather. So they were pretty much, I think, long balling it through. So, good result for Macarthur. Keeps them in that finals hunt. Western United be a bit disappointed. They're 1-0 up in the 8th minute. You'd think a side would keep a clean sheet in a situation, but, things happen and they go from there. And Wellington Phoenix at the moment are 1-0 against Brisbane Roar in New Zealand. And Tomer Hamed scored in the 42nd minute. So if they get the win today, I think they'll go back into the finals hunt with a few others. So that keeps them in that spot. Central Coast still on top on 25 points. Western Sydney with 22 points. And then Macarthur at 3rd. Adelaide United and Melbourne City in that 4th and 5th place. So still battling for the spots there. And Sydney FC would be kind of kicking themselves. They didn't get the opportunity to play Victory in the wet conditions because I say they would have got the win there. But, that's how it rolls.
Yeah, that's there has been quite a bit of rain, and it was quite surprising to see games called off. You don't often see it, but that obviously happened, and let's hope that there's 3 Melbourne teams in the A-League, and you got Melbourne City currently sitting 5th, Western United at 8. So Look, I reckon, it'd be great to see two of the Melbourne sides in the finals. So Western United, they had a good season last year. They made it to the finals, finishing fifth. Melbourne City was second. So let's hope that, for the sake of Melbourne and, those clubs, particularly Western United, one of the newer clubs, it would be great to see them up the top. Just like Macarthur is currently at third position. So as new clubs, it's pretty exciting to see that. But it's good, and it's exciting to see some of the results that are happening in the A-League, and it's been a pretty great season so far with many goals being scored. And it's been great to see. It's been publicised a lot how good the season has been. Many exciting games, and probably the 6-0 win that Melbourne City had a few weeks ago over Victory probably wasn't a close game, an exciting game, but even that game, just to see Melbourne City just dominate that in a derby as well. It's supposed to be a big game, fighting for every ball, but to see a team dominate, that was quite funny in a way. And it's been a good season in the A-League, so definitely would recommend giving it a watch. And we cross now to the AFL, Patrick, where the first rounders happened, and there's been plenty going on with just some shock results. How have you seen it so far?
It's been a pretty crazy first round from Thursday night to now. I think it's pretty crazy in terms of results. I don't think we expected what was going to happen yesterday. All except for the Melbourne Freo game, all the other games went the non-favourite side. So it was pretty crazy. The one that I was surprised about more was actually Sydney and Brisbane. I couldn't believe Sydney won by that margin, and they completely dominated Brisbane for those 4 quarters. The only real highlight for Brisbane would be maybe Joe Danaher kicking his first goal, really. It was a pretty dull affair for Brisbane. They just got outplayed. It looked like Sydney jumped them really well. Those young players coming through from Sydney, Isaac Heaney and the likes of really developing into really good players. And then the other Saturday night game in Essendon and Hawthorn was a real doozy. No one could believe it that Hawthorn were up by Essendon were up by 40 points at half time. And then all out of a sudden, Hawthorn come out of the clouds and kick a few goals and get it back, and then they end up winning it in the last couple of minutes. So it was a quite odd one, and Alistair Clarkson put it right. It was a game of 2 halves. So, it's going to be interesting how they'll go this year, Hawthorn. They're in a funny spot. Essendon are a very funny spot. Both clubs will say they'll be down at the bottom of the ladder, and they kind of proved it last night. Both teams, very inconsistent by both halves of football. I say if you watch that game again, you'd be going, wait, did Hawthorn really come back from 40 points down? Because they didn't look like it in the first quarter and the second quarter. So, but still, there's a lot of positives there for both fans. I wouldn't say 1 point loss is good for Essendon at all, but at least they're competitive, and at least they look like they're building on something. And it might take Ben Rutten a few games to really get that side going. And they'll know they've cost themselves there with that disappointing loss. And then Melbourne and Freo, Melbourne did the job pretty comfortably. I think Fremantle just got outplayed in the end, and they looked really good. The likes of Tamara and those guys looked really good yesterday. I think they kicked a couple goals and really, pushed it pretty hard there. But Melbourne, just with the likes of Christian Petrarca, and that looked really clean. And then finally, the big one, Max, and Adelaide playing Geelong. And no one tipped this one to see Geelong lose the game. Everyone said Geelong's going to win. This is going to be over at half time. No. Other way around. Adelaide killed them and really dominated the contest. And again, the young players stepping up. Billy Frampton really killed it in the forward line, kicked 2 goals, took some really good contested marks. And then for Geelong, they looked lost. The likes of Cam Guthrie and that looked really lost in the contest and couldn't really work themselves back. And when they did, the game was pretty much over by 3/4 time, you know what I mean? And I think the other big issue out of the game was Patrick Dangerfield. He'll probably get a suspension for a few weeks, so that gets him out of the Brownlow. So,
yes.
So that's the big talking point out of all that. from Saturday's games, really.
Actually, you bring up a good point there about danger. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It's Patrick Dangerfield, the president of the Australian Football League Players Association, a Brownlow medalist contender. Let's see what the AFL does there. That will be interesting, and I'm looking forward to that. But Patrick, thanks for your thoughts today. It's a pleasure to get you on. Pleasure to get the update from you to hear about what's been happening across different sports around the world. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a lovely week.
You too, Max. Thanks very much, mate.
And we thank Patrick Morrow for coming onto the Sports Hour to share his thoughts. As always, much appreciated. Now we're going to cross to Connor Kennedy, nutrition coach and personal trainer, who's going to share his thoughts and give us some cool information on the meditation and the benefits on it. So I hope you enjoy it. And now it's time to welcome nutrition coach and personal trainer, Connor Kennedy. Connor, welcome to the Sports Hour. It's a pleasure to have you on today.
Thanks very much, Maximus. It's good to be here. I hope you don't mind calling you by your full name. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here back once again.
I like it, Connor. I like it. Now, today we're talking meditation, right? So, you know a little bit about it, and you've had some experiences yourself with it. Can you explain to us what meditation has done for you? You've done a little bit of it, and can you explain some of the benefits from it?
Yeah, absolutely, Max. Yeah, so I've been meditating every single day for about a year and a half now. And what I've found for me, it's just done absolute wonders. It's helped me be much more present in my life, much happier and more calm. I don't get as angry at things anymore. I rarely ever get upset or, angry or annoyed with people. And I also am more present in my day-to-day in the fact that, if I've got to commute to work or something, I don't always need to be looking at my screen. I sometimes just stop and take a few deep breaths and enjoy life and focus on the present moment I'm in. And what that's done for me is just made me a much happier person. I'm not relying on my screens and things external from me to give me that happiness. And so meditation for me is that opportunity every day to be in touch with my own thoughts, my own brain, and just be present, just enjoy life. And another big thing that I get out of meditation is it's an opportunity to be grateful and to think about all of the things in my life that I'm grateful for. And that straight away makes you feel awesome when you're grateful for what you have in your life.
Yeah, so it sounds like it sort of clears your mind a lot from doing meditation, and as you said, keeps you in the present, which is, might sound like a little thing, but it's a big thing that makes a enormous difference. Is that sort of, what you achieve from it most times? You sort of stay in the present and clear the mind and be free, and obviously, as you said, don't sort of rely on things. Don't have too many things that you're thinking about, and just have that clear mind. Is that what you sort of try to achieve? And the other question with that is, how often and what does it look like, your meditation? Yeah,
sure. Yeah, so that is what you try to achieve, and you aim to just be with your own thoughts and just kind of take the time. We all have busy lives and we're all always doing something, even if you're not working, but when you're home, you're watching TV or you're looking at your phone or doing something. And so just having that time, a little bit of time every single day to just be present and just think about your life. And I find that really, really helps. Now, in terms of what it actually looks like for me, I keep it really short actually, because we don't all have half an hour every day to devote to something like meditation if you've got busy lives and you're trying to pursue other things in your life. So I do 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and what I'll do is some days I'll do that completely on my own with my own thoughts. no phone or anything. But some days I'll search up a meditation on YouTube and I'll follow a guided meditation, and there's hundreds of free ones there. There's also heaps and heaps of apps that can do it for you. And they'll just kind of provide you a little bit of guidance of what to think about and focus on, and focusing on the breath. And, they'll give you some mantras to repeat to yourself. And so I like to mix it up and have the two different types of meditation. And one other thing I will say actually is that there's been a couple of times where I've done a half an hour meditation, and these have actually had a far, far greater and better effect on my mind than any of my other meditations.
Yeah, wow.
So my consistent meditations, 10 to 15 minutes every day, right now, a year and a half later from when I started, I'm in a much better place mentally than I was then, because of the meditation and other things, of course, as well. But immediately afterwards, for the rest of the day, when I did that half an hour meditation, man, nothing just mattered to me. I was just so relaxed and happy, and I didn't have a care in the world, and it was just a beautiful feeling. And so I think it's something everyone definitely has to try. Try meditating for half an hour, follow a guided one, or be with your own thoughts, but just try and be present for half an hour, and it makes a huge difference to your day.
Yeah, that's quite incredible how you say that it's had a much bigger effect doing a 30-minute meditation. A lot of people would be sitting there right now listening, Connor, and saying, this is pretty stupid. Like, meditation, it's just a waste of time. That's what people would say out there. And what would you say to them? Because it can be a hard sell, meditation. And we've all, I think we've all had those moments where we're like, oh, no, I just want to be on my phone right now doing something rather than this. But, obviously it works, and it's proven to work for a lot of people. But what do you say? What do you say to these people? It's a strange question.
It's a good question, Max. It's a good question, because I actually used to be one of those people. Before I started meditating, my brother and my mum, they used to always meditate and always talk about the benefits and stuff. And, I used to think, I don't need that stuff. That's for people who, are weird, or, I used to think just like everyone else, who you're asking the question about. And, one day I decided to try it. And what I'd say is the benefits are obviously incredible, not just from anecdotal evidence, but there's been heaps of studies to show that meditation is really helpful in the ways that I described. But I'd say it's for those people, it's a bit of a case of an ego issue, or for me at least it was as well. When I used to look at meditation as a silly thing, I used to think, oh no, someone like me, I don't need to do that. But I'd say, just try to be humble and recognize that it can actually really help you out. Just try it, drop the ego a little bit. You're no better than anyone else. And see how it goes for you. Now, you might have one meditation and never want to do it again, and that's fine. But I will say that I think it's a habit of highly successful people. And so if you're looking to improve your life and make your life better, then meditation is definitely something that you should be doing.
Absolutely, Connor. And I appreciate those thoughts. And I think people now, after listening to this, would give it a try, at least a 2-minute meditation. Speaking of meditation,
yeah, absolutely. And sorry, Max, I'll just cut you off for a second there.
Yeah.
And if there are any beginners looking to get started with meditation, I'd recommend doing some beginner guided meditations on YouTube. Super easy. Just search up 10-minute beginner guided meditation, and they'll come up. They'll take you through it really nice and easily. And at the start, it'll be hard to just focus on your breathing and your thoughts, and you'll be distracted. But just try that out and ease into it and see how you go.
And for our listeners out there as well, we've spoken to you about sleep, diet, breathing, cold showers, and now meditation. So you've got a range of knowledge, Connor. So, for people out there, if they want to hit you up, it would be great to jump on your slide into your DMs on Instagram. So that would be,
Absolutely.
and give you a follow for good information there.
Yeah,
So
you can
yeah.
find me on Instagram at Connor Kennedy, where the second O is a 0. Or just search up my name and you'll find me.
Absolutely. Go for that one. That would be good. You got some great information on that page. So I highly recommend that to all the listeners. But Connor, there was something else that happened over the weekend. It was Saturday evening, and your mighty Sydney Swans got up in unlikely fashion. They beat the Brisbane Lions at the Gabba in Brisbane. Talk us through it. You're a Swan supporter. You had a rough year last year. How did that happen?
Max,
Seriously, how did that happen?
Look, Max, I'm glad you brought this up because I love talking about health and fitness, but I love my mighty Swannies, so I'm happy to finally be on here and talk about some sport. And man, I don't know how it happened either, to be honest. I didn't tip the Swans this week. I don't think many people did at all. Obviously, playing one of the top teams, we had 3 debutants, and Max, to be honest, it was exciting. Like, I've never been this excited as a Swan supporter for the future. It was unreal. So we had Logan McDonald, Braden Campbell, and Errol Goulden all playing their first games. We had Chad Warner playing his 3rd or 4th game. And then we had Sam Wicks, who still played less than 10 games, 5 of them. They all played unreal last night. I think Errol Goulden had around 20 disposals and 3 goals. Logan kicked 3 goals. Braden Campbell had around 15 disposals, but he was playing in the back line and he did a great job. He looked impressive as well. Wixie was just, he was lovely as ever. We saw glimpses of it last season. He's going to be a star. And Chad Warner looked great as well. So it's very exciting. And the questions asked, Will Haywood wasn't even playing in that team. And the commentators were saying, is he even in our best 22 right now with how we looked right now? Will Haywood's going to have to fight for his spot. And I was joking that Buddy's going to have to fight for his spot back in the team as well, because we just looked unreal last night. And not just Brisbane weren't playing well, but our ball movement was just clean. We were hitting every single target inside 50, and oh man, it was very exciting. It's a bright future for the Swans.
So that's remarkable, and I'm glad you mentioned those debutants, because they certainly did step up quite amazingly. That's super exciting for the club. But how did it happen? Who did it? Like, it was those guys.
Well,
it was
we
who
had,
did it?
19 goals. We had 19 goals. Look, I'll tell you about a couple of other things. Isaac Heaney was back. He was injured for most of last season. He was playing up forward, and he just dominated up forward. He was acting a bit like a Buddy type character. He was our main forward, our go-to guy. He kicked 3 goals and just very reliable. He was unreal last night. One of the best games he's played. Paps had a lot of assists on Papley, like normal. He didn't have any of his star goal moments, but as always, he was a great team player. He's exciting. He always made things happen with the ball. And so he set up a lot of goals. But I've got to talk about Callum Mills. He's played back most of his career, and he was injured last season. He came back in the midfield this time, and John Longmire stated that he's going to be playing more in the midfield this year. He absolutely dominated. He had the most disposals of anyone on the ground, and he kicked 2 goals straight. He hadn't actually kicked a goal in 2 years before last night, and he kicked 2. He just took over the game. So he's a natural-born midfielder, and I think he's going to be looking good for All-Australian this year if he stays in the midfield.
Yeah, that's amazing. 2 goals. yeah, that's insane. And there was that third quarter where the scores were level in the third quarter. Brisbane had the game sort of in the first quarter, then Swans came back a bit, and they ended up leveling the score by halftime. And then the Swans just took it by storm took it out to a 34-point lead at three-quarter time after the scores were level at halftime, and they ended up winning the game by about 25 to 30. What was it? No, they won the game by 31 points. Quite remarkable. Now that's just amazing, Connor.
It was unreal. Yeah.
Yeah, and McCartan, he's gone down to the back line this year, hasn't he? Talk us through that move from the master, John Longmire.
Look, I'm a big fan of John Horse, as we know. He's a great guy and
family friend.
Sydney's. Yes, he is. He is. He's a friend of my dad's, but he is our longest-standing coach at Sydney, which is very exciting. We stuck through him. You know, we've had a rough couple of years at the Swans, and there's always talk of ditching the coach, but I think John's done nothing wrong, and he's a genius. So anyway, back to what I was saying with Tom McCartan, you asked. He actually played back for, I think, the last few games of last season, or the second half of last season, and he just looked incredible. Like he looked like it was just the easiest job in the world going back after he'd been playing forward. You know, he wasn't punching the ball. He would take every single mark. Like, he's a fantastic mark, very, very good at using his body. And so he's just straight up slipped into the role as one of our best defenders. Rampy was injured at the end of last season. He slipped back into our back line as well, which is just obviously, Rampy's an all-Australian contender. He's just an unreal player. You always have to mention him as one of the best backmen in the league. So that's really exciting as well with Tom McCartan back there. I think it's looking really promising in all aspects of Sydney's game.
Now, top 8. Is it going to be top 8 for the Swans this year?
Look, Max. Look, if we played like we did last night, I think we can go all the way this year. But look, I don't know about that. I'd be very happy with top 8 this year, and then a premiership in the next 3 years. That's what I'm hoping for. And I think it's very doable. This year, look, I don't think we'll win the flag, but I think top 8 definitely.
Wow.
And one other thing that I will say, Max, I'm excited after last night, but one other thing that I will say is just, it was unreal with our debutants. The class is just insane. Like, by the second half of the game, I was hoping the ball went to them. They felt like some of our most reliable players. They just weren't missing targets. I felt good and safe when the debutants we had the ball, especially Errol Goulden. He was the one that impressed me the most. He was just complete class. He's been in the Swans Academy since 10 years old. And it's just incredible, how we could identify that sort of talent in a 10-year-old kid. And he was just unbelievable. Every time he had the ball, I knew something special was going to happen. So to get that feeling from a debutant is amazing, because usually, your debutants take a few games and you're a little bit nervous that they're going to mess up or, bite off more than they can chew in their first few games. But our guys just looked unreal. They looked like fourth-year players already in their first game last night. So,
yeah, and that's quite remarkable. And you mentioned Gould, who had a crazy game,
Goulden.
19 touches. Goulden, 19 touches and 3 goals, 1 on debut, which is quite exceptional. And to go with that, he had 10 marks, which is quite amazing. But as they say in football, Connor, 1 week at a time, and next week it's the Crows at the SCG.
Yes, it's going to be an interesting draw coming up for the Swans, because we've got next week the Crows, obviously the other team who weren't supposed to win. They smashed Geelong just like we did to Brisbane, and so it's going to be an interesting one for sure. And then the week after, we've got Richmond. So in the next 2 weeks, Max, we're really going to see just how good this Sydney side is, and we're going to see if what we produced last night is what's going to happen for the rest of the season with the Swans side.
Absolutely, Connor, and I'm looking forward to watching it. And it's a pleasure to get your thoughts on the Swannies. You got great knowledge of the team, as we've heard just then. So it's a real pleasure to hear from you, not just about the fitness side of life, but also about the football side. So thanks very much for joining us, Connor. And
All the best. Have a great week.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maximus.
And we thank Connor Kennedy for coming on the Sports Hour, as always. We've got some great information today on meditation, which was great to hear, and also we got a little bit from him on the AFL and the Sydney Swans, who he barracks for. So we thank him for coming on and sharing his thoughts. And now we're going across to Jack Fisher, who is an Adelaide supporter and loves the Crows. And they just recently had a massive win against Geelong in round 1. So we're looking forward to chatting to him about that and more. So I hope you enjoy it.
We've had to wait a very, very long time for this day to happen, for this day to come around. It's been a long grind, but the day has finally arrived, and it's a pleasure to welcome Jack Fisher, Adelaide supporter and a great man, to the Sports Hour. How are you going today, Jack?
Hey, Maxie, mate. You can tell you one thing for free, mate. It's a pleasure to be back on the show. Mate, I've just been waiting for that call up again, mate. I've been seeing some of my fellow colleagues get the call up, mate, and I've just been waiting for my chance. So, mate, it's good to be back, and mate, it's good to be back on the Sports Hour.
Absolutely, Jack. And one thing that we've been waiting for is for a Crows win, and it's happened. And with that comes rewards, and the call up is long awaited, long overdue, and there's no better time to be bringing you up. Talk us through the game. You're a Crow supporter. It's been a tough few years, very tough few years. Going through last year, you lost about 12 games in a row or whatever it was, but you've started off 2021 with a win on the board, round 1 against Geelong. Talk me through how you felt and how you saw the game on Saturday.
Yeah, mate. As you said, you summed it up pretty well, mate. We got the win, mate. And if I'm honest, I was absolutely shocked, mate. I'd planned to have a bit of a lunch, and the game started at around 3:30 or something like that. And I had a lunch, a little tea at 4. So I gave myself, a good 10 minutes to watch a game, thinking would be absolutely obliviated. But, mate, came out of the blocks, Texan kicked the first goal, and we were just firing, mate. I mean, Rory led, clocked up 30-odd dozzies and just led from the front, followed by some of the debutants, Jimmy Rowe kicked 2 big goals. Then McHenry kicked 2 big goals as well. So there's just some to name a few, Max. But, mate, it was a great win. I mean, it would be fair to say the Crows took a fair few people's money that night, mate, with the multis. I mean, not many people would be backing the Crows next game, paying $5. But, mate, yeah, all in all, mate, we're absolutely ecstatic with the win. I wore my Crows scarf to the arcade, mate, your local, and had a ball there, mate.
Yeah, and look, you're not the only Crows fan that would have had a ball, because being situated in Adelaide, there was plenty of Crows jerseys flying around yesterday, and I tell you what, there was just as many today flying around. Many of the supporters would have enjoyed it, and I tell you what, it was like Tex Walker kicks the first goal. I'm like, wow, how have Adelaide kicked the first goal of the game? Then they just kept going. How have they done this? They're winning at quarter time. Then they're winning half. Then they're just winning the game, and you're like, this is crazy. Just run me through some of your emotions and probably something you're surprised. Just run me through how you felt, what you did. Did you jump out of the couch? Just run me through it.
Yeah, mate, I'll run you through it as you asked me to. Mate, look, we all have our different, kind of vibes watching the footy.
Yeah.
But you know what? I thought, to begin the season, to begin the year, because I think, Maxie, I think the year starts when footy starts. So I thought to begin the year, I'd sit and watch footy on my own, analyse the Crows, mate, and have a beer to top it off. But anyway, yeah, so I'm sitting there, mate, and we've kicked the first goal, blah, blah, blah. We kicked the third goal, fourth goal, and we're up, up to 20-odd points. And, mate, the vocals started to get a bit of use, mate. I started, to get a bit more involved in the game. They include me in. I bloody wolf whistled my old man to come upstairs and watch the footy with me. Yeah. Then we had us both there. And then we had my brother there. and then we had the dogs there, and then my mum came. So, mate, it was a bit of a scene by the end of the show, Hatza. I mean, we had, as I said, the vocals were getting a bit of use, and, mate, we were just having a great time, screaming at TV, as you do, thinking we're at the game. And, by the end of the Max, as the injuries started to come in, and we on the side of our toes.
Yeah.
Hoping that we'll get over the line, which we did successfully, as you know. So, mate, it was all kind of emotions throughout the day, mate. No better way being with the family and a beverage.
Yeah, and that's brilliant, and you've told that story beautifully. It's great. That's the story that that's brilliant. That's what sport does. It can be so good. Now this is just one game, one match. As we know, it's an 18-week season, and there's a lot. Sorry, not 18 weeks. It's 22 now. 23 rounds actually. Tell me now, top 8 for the Crows. What do you reckon, Jack?
Yeah, mate. I mean, I've been asked this, being one of the few Crows supporters in Melbourne, as I was wearing my scarf, I had a couple of people come up to me laughing, giggling, and, mate, I simply gave them the Dusty Martin, don't argue. I had enough, Mickey. I mean, we had a big win. I thought we'd celebrate it. And as I said, someone came up to me and asked me, top 8, mate, top 8. And, I thought to myself, we had a big win. We beat Geelong, who's a great team, but I kind of, jumped back down into reality, back onto the earth. And quite frankly, I do not think we'll make the top 8. We had a great win, great start to the season, but unfortunately, our list is just so young, so inexperienced. We need to give some time. I mean, we've got Texie Walker and Rory Sloane, setting the tone, setting the path, to the finals. But as you know, Maxie, with your beloved Carlton, which you analyse quite frequently, it just takes time, mate. So I reckon in 2 years' time we'll be a top 8 side, comfortably. But at the moment, mate, we're sitting in third gear.
Yeah, that's a good answer. What I will say though is they just beat Geelong, who played in the finals last year, the grand final. Why can't they make top 8? They just beat Geelong. Tell me a team that's similar to Geelong. A team that's similar to Geelong is maybe a, GWS. That's too easy for the Crows now. Essendon. That's an easy win. Look, I'm talking West Coast. That's a winnable game now for the Crows. So why couldn't they make the top 8?
Yeah, mate. No, I think. Well, yeah, I totally support that. But mate, great point you've risen. But look, as I said, it's just so early, mate. The team's going to get used to get used to the game, get their chemistry. I mean, Geelong's got so many new players. I mean, they've hardly played games together. I mean, with Sean Higgins, Jez Cameron. They've just got time, and next thing you know, they'll be blowing up on top of the ladder, mate. So, I'm going to take the more appropriate approach, and just say we're not going to make the top 8 this year.
Yep, I like your thinking. You got to give it time. You're being a good supporter. Give them time. They need that. You're right. Now there was another part of the game which occurred, and it was a bump. Patrick Dangerfield, he sent a player off the field with a bump. It was sort of a head clash, and Danger went for the bump. What are your thoughts on it? Is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? Is it no weeks?
Yeah, mate. It was it wasn't a very nice scene, mate. It was blood everywhere. Poor Jakey Kelly's concussed and bit out of it. So you had a bit of a ride of emotions from excited when we're up and was all over him to then Jakey Kelly going down, which was a bit it was critical for the team, and it was just a bit daunting. But mate, I think it was completely unintentional. Great bump, great footy, whatever.
Yeah.
But purely because of the impact of the injury and the concussion, the blood, Danger's going to get a week for it. He's going to get a week for it. he made unnecessary contact, but it was unintentional. However, the damage which Danger did was simply give him a week.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that view. And with that view means no Brownlow medal for Patrick Dangerfield. That's big for him, and that's going to be costly because he is one of the favourites, I think, to win the award. So yeah, but look, I think it's definitely a week. If the AFL somehow figure out a way to give him no weeks to keep him in the Brownlow fight, that'll be crazy. But anyway, he is the AFL Players Association president. So this is where the AFL needs to hold their integrity to account and keep it a level playing field. Just because it's Danger doesn't mean he shouldn't get weeks. Now, Jack, I wanted to go to some other AFL games, right? We've spoken about your Crowies. Tell us, what did you think from the weekends, from some of the other games, what you saw and what you thought from them?
Yeah, mate. I mean, mate, all in all, Max, it was just an absolutely ridiculous round of football. We had some absolute bolters with the Crows and, smashing it out of the park, and the Swans smashing it out, completely smashing all odds. And then we had the usuals like the Port Adelaides and the Eagles taking the win and, showing the crowds and showing the fans what they're completely made of and living up to their expectation. Mate, particularly, I thought the Swans were an absolute. I was very surprised. No, absolute bolter in the round with no Buddy Franklin, no real goal kickers other than Tom Papley and Isaac Heaney. Their rookies stood up. Unfortunately, took out the Brisbane Lions with Ian Golden kicking 2, Logan McDonald kicking 2, mate. Both kicking 3 and combining for 6. So it was it was a huge delight for the Swans fans. And really, mate, they took it out of the Lions' hands and took the win. That was a gutsy win, mate. I mean, with a home crowd of the Brisbane Lions taking it to them and beating them on their home deck was something to remember, mate. So that was my highlight of the round. I was pretty surprised, and I did watch the whole game, hoping my cousin would be playing. But to the delight of these youngsters, they definitely made it worthwhile.
Well, Will Hayward, he was the medical sub. So I don't know. You could say that he did play because I think he gets full match payments, even though he's a medical sub. Obviously, he didn't go onto the ground, which is unfortunate. Love to see him play. But it's interesting because I'm pretty sure even the medical subs get full match payments, same as any other player on the field, which is a bit of a surprising thing. But for Will Hayward's sake, hopefully he can get back out on the ground. Do you have an update on him, Jack, and how he's travelling at the Swans?
Yeah, mate, he's going really well, actually. I'm catching up with him next week. I'll be heading up to Sydney to see him and watch Swans v Crows, in fact. But no, he's going well, mate. He's last year there was obviously a very mentally and physically daunting year. Playing so much footy in such a small amount of time. So his body was pulling up very, very sore. Shoulders, calves. I can't actually quite remember all of them, but no, he's travelling well, mate. I'm looking forward to seeing him, but obviously he's got a bit of work to do trying back into the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll be going for the Crows, won't you, next week at that game?
Oh, mate, it'll be rude not to, Mackie. I mean, I'll if we're allowed to, I'll most likely be down the rooms, but I will be definitely having my Crows soul with me.
Yes, brilliant, Yak. And any last words on the AFL season and any strong thoughts you got on it?
Yeah, mate. Lastly, Maxie, I just wanted to speak about the additional medical sub. I mean, I think it's a great incentive by the AFL to introduce it. It really gives clubs a bit of backup, and obviously injuries are becoming very popular in this day and age. So it gives clubs a additional player to help them their side and try and minimise the effect of the injury. But mate, I think there's just so many gaps in the addition. I mean, there's lots of grey areas as you've heard obviously on TV with say wet weather footy like today, wet weather footy, and you've got a tool who could easily just put their hand up and say they've got an injury to be replaced by a smaller player, obviously more suited for the weather. That'll just cause lots of controversy. And I think the AFL kind of introduced it too quickly and didn't really revise it. So it's going to cause a lot of grey area, which I'm sure lots of clubs will vocally, pronounce. So that'll be interesting to see how it unfolds over the next couple of days. But as I said, mate, I just think there's a lot of grey area, and it's got to be some kind of additions to the rules, including has to be an injury where they're out for 12 days to minimise those grey areas and gaps in the additions to the rule. But other than that, mate, I'm loving having the footy back, mate. As I said, the year starts when footy starts, so it's been great, mate, and been loving it.
Yeah, and look, it's a great point you make about the medical sub. I think it's a great initiative from the AFL to bring it in, but you make a really good point that they should have given it more time so they could revise it and make it the best rule ever. But they brought it in one day before, which is just insane, really. It really is. And that's a great point you make. And I'm just trying to find the rule. But yeah, here it says, to be eligible for a medical sub, the club doctor must decide that an injured player will be unable to play a game in the next 12 days. So, yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if that's saying if a player gets medically subbed out, they can't play the next game. But that's just saying that the doctor has to judge whether he can play the next 12 days. That's interesting. Yeah, it's one that I think if a player is medically subbed out, they shouldn't be able to play the next week. That way,
Correct.
The rule will be used quite well. And I'll ask you another question on the new stand rule. What's your view on that? Player on the mark standing.
Yeah, no, I really don't mind it, mate. It makes the game faster. It encourages more goals, and it really opens up the 45s. To get that big ball movement. You'll see. I'm sure you saw a lot of handball receives in the first round, mate. But I think that's just going to increase even more over the next coming days, rounds. Because, mate, you've got the whole arc now. They're stationary, so you've got all those 45s to hit. Because as you know, mate, playing footy yourself, coaches and teams really try to encourage the man on the mark to kind of block off the middle.
Yeah.
To obviously that's the rebound. That's the most dangerous part in the ground. If you miss a kick there, you turn it over your eye, or you hit a kick there, you're in a goal. So. Obviously, taking that away has caused a lot of goal scoring and really, really made the game more exciting and faster to watch.
Absolutely, and I agree with you there. The only thing I find a little bit unusual is players standing and not being able to move at all. But look, it makes the game better. I would probably prefer. Look, before I say this, I'm sick of seeing rules being changed all the time. So I don't want to see another one changed. But I would have liked for them to have allowed players to move like one step to the right, one step to the left, just give them a metre either side. That's my view. But then at the same time, that might be hard for umpires to judge. But I think that would have been a bit better because seeing players stand is just a little bit awkward. But at the same time, look, it's worked. We've gotten pretty good games of football. They've just been a little bit more entertaining, faster ball movement. It's been pretty good to watch. Balls going through the corridor, just bang, bang. It's been nice. But I probably would have liked that. I wouldn't have minded that, but I agree. I like the change. It's better than what we had before, definitely. So, yeah, it's
Yeah, mate, totally agree.
absolutely. Jack, it's a pleasure to have you on, mate. Real honour. Thanks for coming on. It's great to get your thoughts, and look, mate, it'll be great to get you back on the show very soon again.
Thanks again, Max, mate. I appreciate it. I love it coming on the Sports Hour. And looking forward to the next couple shows, mate. But yeah, I hope you're well, and yeah, we'll chat soon, mate.
And we thank Jack Fisher for coming on the Sports Hour. It was great to have him on to share his thoughts on the AFL, the Crows, and everything that's happening there. So we thank him for coming on. And that wraps up our show for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, go to our social media page at Sports Hour FM on Twitter, which you can find and look at to keep updated with the show, and also find our podcast there. So jump on that. Also go to the Making Media page run by Ralph Barba, who does a great job for us in putting these shows together. So jump on that page, give it a like on Facebook and Twitter. And then there's also the Brimbank Neighbourhood House page, which is on Facebook. And you can find some of the other shows here on Brimbank Live there. And feel free to give that page a follow to stay updated with everything happening on Brimbank Live. But all in all, guys, I hope you've enjoyed the show, had a lovely week, and thanks very much for tuning in. You're tuning into the Sports Hour on Brimbank Live on Live FM.
With thanks to the City of Brimbank across our neighbourhood and the world, the Sports Hour with Max Hatzoglou on Brimbank Live on Live FM.